Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sree's daily global COVID-19 show. My name is Sree Sreenivasan, and it's my honor to convene this daily conversation around all things COVID-19 and of the COVID-19 era. We focus on three aspects of the crisis: health, finance, and the inequality crises. We're always looking for suggestions and for speakers, themes, and topics. Please email me, sree@sree.net, SREE@SREE.net. We always welcome your ideas and thoughts. Today's episode 193. That means we've been on the air for 193 days in a row as the pandemic set in and the lockdown set in New York. 193 days ago, we started doing this show, and we've been on every single day. We are speaking the morning after the death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and we will be talking a lot about her today as we focus on race and religion in America. We couldn't have picked a better speaker to be with us this morning as we think about what is going to happen over the next 50 days or so as America prepares for the election that's coming. Our guest is Professor Khyati Joshi. She's at Prof. K. Joshi. She's a professor of education at Fairleigh Dickinson and author of numerous books, including her new one, White Christian Privilege: The Illusion of Religious Equality in America, as well as New Roots in America's Sacred Ground: Religion, Race, and Ethnicity in Indian America. We'll talk about her book. We'll talk about RBG. We'll talk about race. We'll talk about religion and so much more. And you'll meet her in just a minute. Please tag and share this right now with your friends and family. We'd love for everyone to be able to see this and get to meet Professor Joshi. Hi, everybody. I'm Sree. Thank you so much for being here. We love having you here with us. I'm the Marshall Loeb Visiting Professor of Digital Innovation at Stony Brook School of Journalism and the co-founder of Digimentors, a social, digital, and virtual events consulting company. Our motto: don't cancel your event till you've talked to us. Don't plan your virtual event till you've talked to us. We've done events for 50 people and events for 100,000 people. Just this week, we did one event that had the head of the WHO, the Dalai Lama, the mayor of Los Angeles, and Renee Fleming, the famous opera singer. That was just one of our events this week. We had 3 the same day, and that's how we can help you. Please be in touch with us. My email is right here, sree@sree.net. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. We are so grateful. This is our show. In our first 175 episodes, we've had more than 1 million viewers, 129 million social impressions, 316 guests, 185 of them women, from 63 cities and 17 countries, including the chief scientist of the World Health Organization. We've had doctors, nurses, authors, journalists, CEOs, founders, teachers, professors, and all of this is possible because of our partnership with Scroll Global and Scroll.in. Please check them out. And our archives, all of them, are at youtube.com/Sreenet, youtube.com/Sreenet. And many thanks to our producers, Rose Horowitz at Rose Horowitz 31 and Vandana Menon, Vandana_Menon. Please follow both of them. They've been on this journey with me for 193 days in a row. We're also able to do this because of our sponsors, and we will be thanking them in just a little bit. Thank you again for being here. Please share this right now. We're on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And on each of those platforms, if you tag your friends or hit share, they can watch this later, even if they're not awake at this time. We are so grateful to everybody for being here and for supporting this show for all these days. We're very grateful to you. All right, are you ready to talk about RBG? Are you ready to talk about what's going to happen in this country in the next few weeks and months and years and decades? All of that's going to be determined because of what happened last night, the passing of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And so we have a great guest who's going to help us make sense of it all and talk about what this means for all of us, and not just people in America. Everybody in the world is going to be affected by her passing. And so joining us right now on screen is Professor Khyati Joshi of Fairleigh Dickinson. She's the author of White Christian Privilege, The Illusion of Religious Equality in America. Please welcome Professor Joshi. Hello.
Hi there, Sree. Happy to be here.
Thank you for coming, and thank you. This is, I don't know, are you a morning person?
Sometimes.
Well, thank you for getting up early for us. We normally do this at 9 p.m. on every day, but on Saturday mornings we try to do it in the morning so that my producers can have the evening off and not have this on their agenda. But my first question to you, as it is to every single guest, how are you? Where are you? And how's your family doing through the pandemic?
Well, first of all, thanks again for having me. We are fine. Thankfully, my family, everybody in my close family, extended family, folks are okay, both here and in India. So I'm thankful, very thankful for that. Overall, we're doing all right. I think there's certainly good days and bad days. Days where I get very angry as to why we're in this predicament when we know some of the things could be avoided. And then I try to pull myself out of that. Some days I'm able to pull myself out, and other days I have a really difficult time. But overall, healthy. Physically healthy, in most cases mentally healthy, so very thankful, incredibly thankful.
I think we lose track of how much we do have to be thankful for those who are in good shape through this crisis. And I'm sure we're going to be a little upset during this episode, it's good to start with that thankfulness, because it's easy to lose track of, isn't it?
It is. I think that, we're in U.S. approaching 200,000 deaths. We probably are actually really surpassed that in terms of real numbers, and and then with everything going on in terms of the socio-political, cultural stuff in our country, I mean, every day, those of us who believe in democracy, who believe in the ideals of this country, we are put to the test every day, and it's exhausting. It is exhausting.
And you said one of the things that's so important, that we didn't have to be here. Yes, the virus was going to, if it was going to happen, it was going to come to America. But it's the management of the virus that's so upsetting, and how those of us who are in the Northeast, in New York, New Jersey, and places like that, we sacrifice so much, 40,000 lives and countless jobs lost. And we watched before that in horror as Europe and China were the epicenters, and then we became the epicenter, and now we watch in horror as the rest of America has had multiple epicenters.
Yeah.
And it didn't have to be like that if the leadership in Washington, the leadership at the governor's levels in these other states had followed just our lead. We showed them the way, and they didn't listen. Your thoughts?
I know. So to answer one of your first questions, I am in New Jersey, so I'm right there with you. We've been going through the same thing, and it is very distressing, because I am, my family, my parents, my sister, they live in Atlanta. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. Very proud to be from Atlanta.
I hear it in your voice, just a little bit. Sometimes it comes out.
You will. As we get going, you'll hear it more and more. But it's very distressing to know that my parents' health is at risk, and so many of my uncles and aunties and everybody, because the governor of Georgia is not, or did not, implement the things that Governor Murphy and Governor Cuomo did, and I just really feel like my family in Atlanta is more susceptible, is more at risk, and not just my family, but everybody. And that's also stressful, and that weighs on you. I've not been able to see my parents. I'm dying to see them, but how do I see them and make sure they're okay? So we stick to FaceTime, and that's what we can do.
One of the things that I've told people is that we are so upset about the situation, but this is sort of the best way in which, if the pandemic was going to go down and the world was going to end, where we still are able to talk and connect in this way. Imagine if things become worse, or you didn't have electricity, you didn't have the food chain, you didn't have the internet. Like, all of those things would make things so much worse. And so they asked us for the smallest thing: wear a mask. That's all they asked us to do, and stay at home. Those two things. And people protested and fought just those things, and turned the simplest of acts, wearing a mask, into a political act. And here we are.
Well, some people took the lead from the president. I mean, the person right at the top made it political from day one, right? And so so many issues fall at his feet. I mean, he doesn't care, that's very clear. But when that's what we're up against reason and being rational. And then people want to be irrational, and they're taking not only their lives, but other people's lives in their hands when they do that, and don't follow public health regulations that, expert after expert's putting out. It's a no-brainer to follow.
And here we are. We're just looking at your website, Khyati Joshi's website. There's her book, White Christian Privilege: The Illusion of Religious Equality in America, from NYU Press. You have had so many books and so many pieces of scholarship that has really, these have all had a huge impact on people's understanding of where we are as a country and what is important. And I love looking at all the different elements of your site. You're also a consultant, and you do a lot of teaching, and we'll get to all of that. And look at this, you had a conversation with Cory Booker about race, and he's someone who talks about race a lot, understands the issues. So the fact that you and he were together was awesome to see that. So everyone, please follow Professor Joshi on Twitter. She is Prof. K. Joshi on Twitter, and you will see her talking about politics, race, religion, and so much more. This is such a great conversation. Please share this with your friends and family. Here's Somdatta saying, really enjoying this conversation. So tag your friends right now. Please hit share. And I know, Professor Joshi, that you have a whole team, or at least one person helping you this morning, getting the word out from, is it from the dining room or the living room?
I think it's from the dining room.
You want to give this person a shout out?
Yeah, my husband, John, is sharing this information. And actually, he's my partner in everything in life, and really couldn't have written the book without him. What the other piece that doesn't always come across, but folks who read the book will come to understand, is that I'm in an interfaith and interracial relationship and marriage, and have been for over 2 decades now. And we really live our lives. We're both Hindu and Episcopalian, and we take our religious identities very seriously, and that's a very big part of our lives. And we've raised our son to be Hindu and Episcopalian, and so that's something else I wanted to share, because we share so many things.
So tell us about that, how you can be both in one person.
Well, we both kind of live our faiths. We do the various, we celebrate the various Hindu celebrations. We fast during Shivratri and Janmashtami. We celebrate during Diwali. We also have raised our son with, thankfully, my mom and dad's help, knowing various Hindu shlokas, and he has a sense that he is Hindu. We also go to church as somebody who is Hindu and who's written a book on white Christian privilege. You can, when COVID is not happening, you can find me on Sunday mornings at St. John's in Montclair, New Jersey. And it is a community I'm very proud to be part of. As a Hindu, I am part of this Episcopalian community. And one example I can share with you, Sree, that happened a couple of years ago. As often happens with couples, you schedule things without telling the other person, right? I'm sure it has happened to you.
Yeah.
And one day I was talking with John, and he said, hey, the Mandir reached out, and, they're having this, the Diwali dinner on this date. And I had known about it. We have several Mandirs in the area, and we try to go where we can. And I said, okay. And he tells me the date, and I'm like, but, oh, you know what? I said, I wasn't going to go that evening because I volunteered to be part of our Thanksgiving event at church. So he's like, oh. So on this particular Sunday evening, John went to the Hindu temple for the Diwali dinner, and I went to church to help set up for our event called the Feast for Thanks and Giving. And so that's kind of emblematic of how we have lived our lives.
My wife, Rupa, is listening right here, and she's smiling as she thinks about that relationship and how you're managing that. But what a lovely story that you were at the Christian event and he was at the Hindu event, because you are each both Christian and Hindu. And that's amazing. So let's get to your book, White Christian Privilege. And for everybody watching, we are talking to the author of White Christian Privilege and the Illusion of Religious Equality in America. We are going to talk to her about her book and about RBG and the passing of RBG. And Professor Joshi is going to help us understand the implications of the death of RBG and what that's going to mean. We didn't even have a moment to mourn. I tweeted last night, Professor, that she had an amazing life. And I said, I hope that Trump and McConnell don't try to push through a successor in the next 50 days. And I was criticized for bringing up politics so soon. Well, as you know, McConnell didn't even wait 2 hours to mourn or to let this pass. He could have just said, look, we'll talk about it Monday. We'll talk about it Sunday. We'll talk about it Saturday. But on Friday night, less than 2 hours after Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, he said publicly that he will push through President Trump's nomination. So we'll get to all of that, but let's talk first about your book. And everyone, tell us where you're watching from. Share your comments. We love seeing these comments and sharing them with our guests. That's part of the fun of the show. And let's get to the book and everything that you have written about in there. And the title is White Christian Privilege. Go ahead, Professor.
Well, the book is, I will say, it's both a personal and professional project. Over the last 2 decades, we have seen more and more literature come out, books being published on whiteness in America, white privilege, understanding our whiteness, and, topics in that area. One of the things I always felt was missing was understanding how Christianity has contributed to this concept of whiteness in the United States. So that's really my professional reason for exploring this issue and looking at the intersections of race and religion and how they've impacted law, history, and our present day. And the personal piece of this is that I am Indian American, I'm Hindu, South Asian American, and I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, most of the time really not fitting in. I'm very thankful for the Indian American community I had. And I lived for that community on the weekends because Monday through Friday, bullying, harassment at school was pretty tough. And sometimes I was discriminated against. Sometimes I was bullied and harassed. But sometimes, Sree, what it was that I just didn't know the code words and the secret handshake and the language to kind of fit in, but I didn't see that. So I internalized it, which is what folks do. And you start thinking, well, I'm different and I'm just not going to fit in and blah, blah, blah. And so it wasn't until I was in my 20s, until I was in grad school, that I actually learned this concept of privilege and white privilege. And I think what I'm hoping that one of the things people get from the book, whether they're Christians, atheists, or religious minorities, is language to express and articulate their experiences, because that's what I was able to do once I learned about white privilege and then started exploring Christian privilege. I think I'm one of the very first people to actually write about Christian privilege. I did so way back in my dissertation, but then in subsequent articles and book chapters in 2000 and 2010s. So that's why I wrote the book. And the book is really about exploring, we tend to think because we have freedom of religion in the First Amendment that it exists, because it's on paper, it exists in real life. And that's just not true. Not all religious groups are treated equally in this country. And not only are some discriminated against, but Christianity, specifically Protestant Christianity, has always held advantages in our country. We haven't always been able to see those. So much about privilege is invisible, and my goal in this book is to make the invisible visible.
Oh, such an important book, and the timing of it couldn't be better. This brisk overview is a must-read for those interested in America's Christian foundation. Talk about that foundation, please.
Well, the thing is that we said, with the First Amendment, that people should be able to exercise their religious faiths freely, and that government should not have an established religion. But what we see from the beginning is the influence of Christianity. So we can take I can present one law way back when. The 1790 Naturalization Act declared you had to be a free white man to be a citizen of this country. So Sree, you weren't going to be a citizen way back then, okay?
Yeah.
And it went on to say you had to be a free white man of good moral character. Now, whose morality was going to be considered there? Some of the listeners and viewers might be saying, okay, that's a little vague. But when you look at it in totality with overall United States history and law, it actually isn't. We can fast forward. We can see that in the mid-1800s, there was a movement to try to put an amendment to the Constitution that said that the United States declares, Jesus Christ as our personal savior. Now that didn't pass, but the movement was there to get it going. Then what we see is some immigration laws in the early part of the 20th century that, again, couldn't explicitly say anything about religion. But when you look at the Immigration Act of 1917 and you look at the Immigration Act of 1924, it's really clear. And so here's what I mean by that. The Immigration Act of 1917 created a barred zone. Okay, everybody from a huge chunk of Asia, including South Asia, including India, were prohibited from coming to the United States as of 1917. Now, we have to take into account the religious backgrounds that are being excluded there also. Okay, so now hold on to that piece of information for a minute. Then you have the Immigration Act of 1924, which limited and curtailed immigration from Southern and Eastern Europe. Now you got to look at the countries there and the religious backgrounds of people coming over. Well, when you look at the countries of Southern and Eastern Europe, the religious backgrounds are predominantly Catholic, Jewish, and Eastern Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, right? Not Protestant. So we take a snapshot and just take a look at these two acts to show how through immigration policy, the United States was socially engineering our population to be white and Protestant, right? African Americans were still treated as second-class citizens. Mexicans and other racial minorities, including Native Americans, hardly were considered at all. So that's just a little bit of a snapshot, but then we, fast forward all that, because what is privilege? Privilege is an accumulation of these advantages over time, right? So someone who has white Christian privilege, they didn't do a darn thing in their life today to have it. They were born into this group. And some people will say, well, I'm no longer Christian and I've converted, or I'm an atheist. But those folks actually still benefit from these advantages because they have a way of knowing some things. And so that's what privilege is. And people, as I'm sure you're aware of, kind of many times people get very nervous and angry when the concept of privilege comes up. But you have to understand what it is. It's the accumulation of advantages over time, these advantages that have been embedded into the infrastructure of this country.
And that's something that we all need to understand. And that's why your book is so important. And congratulations for writing it. Do you feel like the title, which is exactly what the book is about, and you address so fairly, did you worry that it was provocative in any way?
Well, it's reality.
That was the
right, it's reality. But yeah, I think for many it is provocative. I mean, I think one of the things I'd want folks to know is that if you even get to page 5 of the book, you'll understand this is not a book about hating Christians. This is not a book about hating white Christians. This is a book about taking a look at the injustices in our country so we can move towards social justice in terms of race and religion. Because while I talk about Christian privilege in the book, sometimes we're talking white Christian privilege, because Christian communities of color, while they may benefit from Christian privilege, they are also then racial minorities. And race is such an important and influencing factor in our country that it can never be taken out of the equation. But yeah, and I've received, comments that are harassing in terms of email and social media, in terms of, writing this book. And well, why don't you try to deal with what's wrong in your country before you try to deal with what's in ours? And I'm thinking, well, actually, I am an American, but that's what happens, right? To those of us who are racial minorities, racial and religious, we're not seen as part of this country. And that's part of the conversation, because these days, particularly, to be American is to be white and Christian. And that Christian piece is a very significant part that we have to understand.
Thank you. These 30 minutes have already flown by, and so we have about 30 minutes left with Professor Joshi. So interesting, everything you're saying. I want everybody to share this with their friends and family. They need to watch this. Even if they don't watch this live, they need to watch this later. So please tag and share with your friends. I'm going to take a quick break here so that we can thank our sponsors. And Professor, you can go into the comments and make sure you're responding as well, and also share. And of course, if you want to text your friends also to tell them to watch on your Facebook and on mine. So thank you very much. We'll be right back with you. And that's Professor Khyati Joshi. We're having a very important conversation. We're going to talk about RBG for a good bit of the next section here. So please share your comments. How are you feeling this morning? Preet Bharara tweeted last night that he wasn't sure, he was trying to decide how much to mourn and how much to fight. Well, I think we have to do both. It's clear. So we'll talk about RBG and the upcoming political fight in just a minute. But first, we want to thank all of you for watching, and please share your comments. Tell us where you're watching from. And I want to thank our sponsors who make this show possible. So we want to start by thanking Muckrack Academy for their support of this show, and Fundamentals of Social Media, a free on-demand certification course that I put together with them. More than 4,000 people have taken this course, and so should you. mrac.co/social. It's free, and as you can see here, some certificates that people have printed out and posted online, and these great comments. I'm so humbled by that. So everyone, please tell your friends to sign up for this free course. We also want to thank The Inventor in You, a step-by-step guide to your first invention by Charles Cunnan Carroll, developer of more than 80 patents, at Inventor Charles, guide to invention.com. Please share this so that anyone you know who's creative and wants to do something that's different and or either invent or reinvent, this is a perfect guide for you. We also want to thank Nunbelievable, divinely delicious cookies on a mission. Each handcrafted cookie provides a meal for those in need. One cookie equals one meal. 20% off with the code SREE, S-R-E-E. Promotional consideration also provided by Please check out hotstar.com/US. And also want to tell you about She's on Call, a fabulous show that airs on Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. on Facebook and Twitter. My friends, Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar and Dr. Marina Kurian are the hosts of that show. And it's on Sundays where they talk about all aspects of healthcare, including, of course, COVID-19. We have busy weekends here. Instead of taking time off, we have a lot of shows at Digimentors. Let me tell you what's coming up after this. At 10 o'clock, our friend Stefan Kaplan, who's on the Digimentors team, hosts the Spin It Social Hour. Let's talk photography and social media. Thomas Werner is his guest co-founder of Ascended Creative, and he's at Instagram, Thomas Werner Projects. Please check that out. And then noon to 2, we have our show on WBAI, a spin-off of this show. It's a call-in show, and we're going to talk about small businesses in Queens and how they're surviving. And then we will talk about interesting and important new work happening at Columbia University with our digital scholarship librarian, Alexander Gil-Fuentes. And then we'll talk RBG with Professor Anil Kalhan of Drexel Klein School of Law. So that's just today. And then tomorrow morning on Sundays, we do the New York Times read along, where we read the print edition of the New York Times out loud. We've been doing for 5 years like crazy people. And our guest is Suzanne McCormick, U.S. President of United Way Worldwide and the former CEO of American Red Cross of Southern Maine, and a former Peace Corps alum out of Thailand. And our executive producer and guest host, Neil Parekh, will be hosting. This is his former colleague, Suzanne, and he's the VP of Events and Communications at Digimentors, our company that does talk shows like this, as well as events around conferences and everything else. And then on Sunday night, we will be bringing you Positivity with Alexander Rosides, who's a founder and president of Social Impact Exchange. Sunday nights are one of my favorite shows because we can try to be positive in the middle of all the rotten stuff going on. All right, are you ready to talk politics? Are you ready to talk RBG? Are you ready to talk about white privilege in this country? Well, our guest is here with us, Professor Khyati Joshi, Professor K. Joshi, Prof. K. Joshi on Twitter. Please follow her. And her book is called White Christian Privilege, The Illusion of Religious Equality in America. Please follow her and please share this conversation. We're live right now on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn. And here she is again. Professor Joshi is with us. Hello, Professor.
Hi there, Sree. Happy to be here.
Thank you. I hope you got a chance to catch your breath and maybe get a drink of water. But we are so grateful to you for being with us here this morning. I want to show you the front pages of the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. Here's the New York Times. The Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg is dead at 87. It says, jurist of historic stature is lost to cancer. And in the Wall Street Journal front page, here it is, Justice Ginsburg, High Court liberal champion, dies at 87. And by the way, also an interesting story here, bans on TikTok, WeChat to begin Sunday. Just imagine one of the most successful tech companies and two of the most successful tech companies in history, WeChat and TikTok, are both going to be banned in the United States, a pawn of the international back and forth between China and President Trump. And they're going to be banned starting on Sunday. A government that is allegedly about free trade and let business have its way, forcing a sale of a company like that. And just, it's so hard to imagine. Of course, when we don't want them to privilege businesses, they do in everything, including the decision called the decision about that businesses, that corporations are companies, right? Like Citizens United was one of those historic decisions that has far-reaching impact, and this is the state of the world today. So, Professor Joshi, thank you for being here. Thank you for already shedding some light in the middle of a lot of heat that we're going to see. And I wanted you to reflect on on Justice Ginsburg and your thoughts on her first as a judge, a jurist, as a justice, and then we'll get into all the politics of it.
Yeah, well, when I first heard yesterday, and this was a fear, right? A fear many of us have had that this might happen. And I often felt so bad that Justice Ginsburg, she was carrying the weight of this country on her little yet huge shoulders, right? She was hanging on for all of us. And when I heard yesterday, boy, was there a pit, kind of awful feeling in my stomach. And I was thinking about it because we have lost somebody. The court now does not have an expert on civil rights, somebody who was a civil rights litigator. And that's, tough. And hopefully we will get a replacement, but that who also has a focus on civil rights. But not if McConnell and Trump have their way. And, earlier, Sree, you commented that you were maligned for making comments, political comments, in the wake of her death. I was so excited, to be on your show today, and I was a little reluctant to share, that excitement. And then I realized that no, RBG would not want folks to sit around and mourn. She'd want people to resist and fight and mourn, right? And so I think actually everybody in what they're doing to resist, we have to. And I'm not surprised that McConnell came out within 2 hours saying this, because not only did she die, but remember, she's also explicitly said what her wish was. And to not even respect that for 24 hours or 48 hours is a slap in the face. But what we have to understand is that this administration and the followers, I don't think they see morality and liberty the same way many of us do. And so asking, I can't believe they did this. Well, I can, right? Because that's their MO. And they keep changing the goalposts. But most importantly, they don't believe in playing fair and with integrity and respect. So we have to stop expecting that, because we're not going to get it. And we have to work accordingly.
Thank you. Here are some of the comments coming in, including a comment here from Sujana Chandrasekhar, Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar, who is one of the hosts of She's on Call tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern. She says, so sad about the loss of RBG, and we can carry on her legacy with leaders like Khyati Joshi and you. Thank you so much. What a beautiful comment. And really appreciate you, Dr. Chandrasekhar. And Iman writes, this is important, and absolutely so important. And Iman has been sharing this and tagging with her tagging her friends, because everybody needs to be watching this. Ellen's watching from New York City. Rachel's watching from New York City. And people are, again, just tagging and sharing with their friends. So important for people to do that. And here Iman says, thanks for joining, Sree. There are some of the most prominent sociologists of religion. We'd love to have more folks on this. Iman says, may she rest in peace. Very, very important. And the book is available in all websites and everywhere, so you can certainly.
It's also an audiobook.
It's also an audiobook. Excellent. So they can read it. Rachel, who's watching, work with me on our oneshare.world event that we told you about with the Dalai Lama and others. You can see the recording right now at oneshare.world/live. And it was about the interdependence of all of us. And it's the Rise or Fall One Shared World Interdependence Summit. So important. And we are seeing comments coming in. Pratyush says, good evening, sir and ma'am, because he's watching from South Asia, from India, where it is, in fact, evening already. Normally, our viewers are here in the morning in India. And Rick says, great oneshare.world conference, well worth watching the replay. Thank you very much. Everybody should do the same. And Dr. Chandrasekhar is actually posting a link to your Amazon page for your book. How nice is that? And Rob's watching from Warsaw in Poland and says, morning to your guest speaker, important topic. Have you been to Eastern Europe?
I've been to Poland.
No. Okay.
I went there. One of the things I'd always wanted to do was to visit Auschwitz. And so I went to Poland specifically for that because my master's is in theological studies with a focus on Holocaust. And I actually spent a year living in Jerusalem. And it's a topic that is really really important to be talking about by all of us. It's a humanitarian issue, right? But I will also say that for me, one of the reasons I do this work around social justice, and as you noted, and I appreciate all your plugs, is that while I'm an author and a professor, I also facilitate workshops for teachers, for professors, for people in the business world around race and other identities, in terms of equity, justice, and inclusion. And one of the real reasons I think I do this work is not only because of the personal experiences I had growing up in Atlanta, Georgia, but one of the books that really inspired me and motivated me was actually Night by Elie Wiesel. And that took me on a journey where I, focused on my undergraduate degree on genocide and Holocaust, and then went on for further education, and then eventually also studied at Yad Vashem in Jerusalem and Hebrew University. And so it is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. And visiting Auschwitz was something I'd wanted to do ever since I'd first heard about it at the age of 15, reading Night.
Yeah, it's so important that you mentioned the Elie Wiesel book, and we are talking on a Jewish holiday this morning, and it just all of these things coming together is so, this is 2020, right? Like the fact that she would die, Ruth Bader Ginsburg would die on the night of Rosh Hashanah is because go ahead.
No, that's what I posted yesterday when I posted about her, was that, with her dying on Erev Rosh Hashanah, what does that mean for the Jewish community? What does that mean for everybody? I mean, I think that, Ruth Bader Ginsburg is such, it sounds so trite and cliche to say she's a role model for so many, but one of the ways I really think about her in terms of her influence, right, is that people's positionality matters, right? And what I mean by that, Sree, is that who we are in terms of, as an for example, as an Indian American Hindu, my outlook on life is one way. Your outlook on life is a different, being male, right? And Ruth Bader Ginsburg brought her gender identity, brought her religious identity, brought her racial identity to her work. And it is through that lens that she saw these cases. It is through those lenses that she wrote, dissenting opinions. Actually, I talk about the Hobby Lobby case in my book. And she, of course, was part of the dissent there. And one of the things she said is that, with Hobby Lobby, you can't, the employees are going to be at a disadvantage if they're not following the background of the employers. And that's exactly what my book is about and what I talk about. So, that's why representation matters. Sometimes people are like, why do people get so fixated on, racial identity or religious identity? But this is how we see the world. And that's why we need so many different people in the boardrooms and in the rooms where decisions are being made, to paraphrase her famous quote, because then different experiences are getting not only taken into account, but then they become part of the decision, which becomes part of the infrastructure of our society.
And I think in every case where you hear complaints about why people are focused on their identity, it's often, almost always, a person of a majority situation, depending on the country and the situation they're in, who are making that point, because they have benefited, as you said, from their privilege, got them to where they are, and now they want everybody to not pay attention to identity. It's their identity that got them to where they are, historically.
That's right. That's right.
We're looking at your Twitter handle, and everyone, please do follow her, Prof. K. Joshi, and scholar, educator, public speaker, race, religion, immigration, and practitioner of social justice education. But maybe the most controversial thing in your entire Twitter is that you have gone down on the side of thin crust pizza, and you have put that with extra jalapenos right on the front, like on your Twitter bio. Explain that.
I am who I am, Sree. I am who I am, you know. Oh, yeah. I mean, I love thin crust pizza. You know, it's really interesting living in New Jersey, New York area where, you know, pizza is just so part of life. I mean, it is everywhere, if you ask me. But in Atlanta, growing up, we had different pizza, you know. And so I'm a thin crust girl. I love it. And I can't enjoy my pizza thoroughly without jalapenos.
All right, that's good to know. Chris Gorman's watching from New York City. He's at the American Folk Art Museum, a great museum that is now reopened with social distancing, and it's just great to hear and see those museums are all opening up again. Pradnya's watching from Silver Spring, Maryland. What's a favorite memory of Washington, D.C. for you?
A favorite memory is, well, I have several because I lived there kind of off and on for a little bit of time. But I think one of my most favorite memories is probably a reimagined memory, I would say. And why I say that is because I don't remember it directly, but I remember it from photos when my parents took my grandparents to Washington, D.C. when they were visiting from India. And we went to DC to see the monuments. And there's a picture in one of the gardens of my sister and I with my grandparents. And that's one that I treasure. I also think about how important it was to my father to take my grandparents to Washington, D.C. to show them, you know, the Capitol. And I think about what that means as an immigrant who came over. He was part of the first wave after 1965, he and my mom, to come here. And, you know, that generation of South Asian immigrants have built our communities, you know, have really built our communities. And I'm so thankful for all they've done. And actually would like to put in a quick plug for SADA, the South Asian American Digital Archives, because they are preserving our history, which is so very, very important.
Tell us about your decision to become an academic. You obviously had the smarts and the chops to do anything you like. How did you decide to follow this route?
I was always interested in religion. Didn't quite know what I would do with it, but I was really interested in it. And I was fortunate enough to have a wonderful mentor at Emory University as an undergrad, Dr. David Blumenthal, who I will say is still a mentor today and actually provided one of the jacket quotes on the book. So it's really special for me that he did that. But
so
I met.
You got to hold the book up a lot longer than that, and let's show the cover again. Hold on, let me move this 1 second here. Let's do this right. We'll take that off and go right to you here. Okay, here you go. Now hold that up. Yep. And there you go. Very, very cool. Yeah.
But he provided one of the jacket quotes.
You got to read that now.
All right. He says, Joshi views subliminal privilege in the common metaphors and underlying assumptions of our society. This privilege is sometimes Christian, sometimes white, and sometimes both. White Christian privilege sets forth the history and the evidence for this privilege and then proposes how to change it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Here's to mentors, by the way.
That's right. Wouldn't be where I am without it. And I believe very much in trying to mentor others. But so he and so many others have been part of my journey. I heard about, you know, it was because of him that I ended up studying at the Hebrew University. And before I went over, I'd been accepted to a doctoral program in social justice education at University of Massachusetts Amherst. And, you know, I certainly was one of the very few in my community who didn't go to medical school. Some went to law school too. But clearly, I mean, there was times where, you know, even my parents were like, what are you doing with your life? But luckily they stuck with me. And I will say that I think they're some of my biggest fans today, if not the biggest. And I'm thankful, you know, for their support, even when they didn't understand what I was doing. And, you know, as an academic, it's not a straight path. The path looks like this, you know. Now I can see, and that's why I try to, you know, work with younger scholars and graduate students, advising them to network, which is not part of academia traditionally, you know, and to put yourself out there, to have more public-facing scholarship, which we in the academy need to also recognize. And you know, as scholarship, so that more and more people will want to do it. Because if you're not going to get credit for earning tenure, you know, for tenure, then junior scholars can't put in that time to do some of the work that we do, right, Sree? And so, you know, as a senior scholar now, that's one of the things that I'm hoping to try to change at my own university. And I know folks are trying to at other places as well.
And it'll make such an impact if you can help make that happen. Pradnya is putting in a link to the South Asian archives, the website, the digital archives. And so everyone check that out. And I got to tell you, the trolls are out for us. And there have been multiple comments that I will not put on the screen, but one question that someone said is, well, Hinduism has privilege. The caste system is all about privilege. Why didn't you write a book about that?
Well, I'm an Americanist by training. You know, I know about American history. I'm not a scholar of Indian history, but I will say absolutely, when I'm in India, I have Hindu privilege. And actually, some of the trolling comments I get is that, you know, well, why don't you talk about Saudi Arabia, and why don't you talk about Egypt or whatever? And I'm like, you have to compare apples to apples. So actually, India is the perfect comparison as a secular democracy. And this country is as Christian as India is Hindu, you know. And so I'm very happy to talk about Hindu privilege in India. I think then, you know, we do have to talk about caste privilege here. There's no question that it exists. I have been in social situations in the last year before COVID, you know, where somebody will be like, oh, you're Joshi. And they're hinting at you being me being Brahmin, right? So it is alive and well. And at the same time, in the United States, being Joshi didn't protect me from the harassment and bullying I faced, you know, and the ostracism that I faced, and the problems that synagogues and Hindu temples and mandirs and masjids and gurudwaras have getting built, because townsfolk come out against them, right? So we have to look at both, but you can use the framework of my book to talk about Hindu privilege in India. Absolutely, it exists. And the current administration in India is proud to use it, much like the current administration in the United States is proud to, you know, stand on white Christian privilege and work from that standpoint.
There are so many comments and questions coming in. Shubham says, hello, how are you? Rick says, rabbis have said that those who die on Rosh Hashanah are the most righteous.
I read that.
And Rick asks, how can we mourn, honor, and celebrate her life to develop the virtues needed to redress the dark side of fake patriotism and the injustices of isms and iniquities? And you have 30 seconds.
Well, it is about focusing.
I was kidding. You know what
I'm gonna go. It is about focusing on civil rights, but I'll tell you a really important thing. If we're talking within the United States, we have to focus on identities where we're at a disadvantage and where we're at an advantage. Because when you have that advantage, if you have white Christian privilege, you have advantage in certain ways to make change that are more difficult for me. At the same time, as a heterosexual woman, for example, I have to be speaking out and working against homophobia. And I know we have marriage equality, but we know our gay lesbian friends are still facing discrimination and harassment, because we approach those issues differently based on whether we're advantaged or disadvantaged. So I would say we have to look at both columns of our identities. And that's where I would ask you start locally in terms of how you can make change. And I'll add one more thing, Sree. In the last chapter of my book, I provide a quick blueprint to how to think about change in our communities.
Thank you for that. And Rick says, Sree, you get amazing guests. Absolutely. And you're seeing one here in action today. If you have suggestions, folks, for guests, for themes, for topics, please let us know. My email is sree@sree.net. We love talking about all kinds of topics. And Monica says, TikTok is not completely banned. You'll get restricted from downloading it, but it won't be officially banned until November. The hope is that something will change before then, I guess.
That is the hope.
Yeah. Let's see. So many. Ellen says, I'm surprised that Mitch McConnell waited the 2 hours to turn it political. And there's so much.
That's riling up their base, though, right? They're not working from respect. They're not working from common decency, Sree, right? For them,
but it doesn't matter, right? There's no punishment for that. There's no reason. I mean, they don't. The way Washington has changed, as you know, there was a time when senators were friends, and their differences were on, at the core they agreed, and there were margins that were large, but they were on the margins, and now the margins are in the middle, and so they don't. There's no one's going to rebuke them because they're not friends over anything else.
Yeah.
So why does Mitch McConnell care what anybody in the Democratic side says? But even though they're all united, a lot of them by white Christian privilege, other things have taken over and become more important to them. So Iman says, thank you for having an audio book, which is important. Tim says, hello from Shahola, Pennsylvania, with the bears and the turkeys. Madhu Joshi says, congratulations, you explain a very nice way. I'm proud of you, Khyati. Do you want?
Thanks, Mom.
How awesome. Very nice to meet you, Auntie. That's the way we greet everyone, as you know, in the South Asian community. And she's in Atlanta?
Yes.
Okay. And then Pradnya says, oh my God, don't get Neil Parekh, our colleague, started on pizza. Tim says, shout out to thin crust pizza. And Pradnya says, every Indian family has such photos. The family visits to DC, I do too. And so many other comments coming in here, really fast and furious. Diana, who was a guest on our show, says, I went to Hebrew University for my master's degree too. It was transformative for me to live in Israel. And Diana was fantastic on our Sunday Positivity show. Lima says, I missed the beginning. Is there such a thing as brown Christian privilege? If so, how would their narrative fit or not fit into white Christian privilege narrative? So she's asking about Latino Christians, about Indian Christians, and others.
So that's what I was talking about, that Christian communities of color can have Christian privilege, but they don't have race privilege, right? White privilege. And so we are more than just one identity. And I talk a little bit about that in the book. But somebody who is an Indian Christian or who is a Latino Christian still has Christian privilege, but then they also face discrimination because of their racial identity. And an analogy is, Jewish folks don't have Christian privilege, right? They face anti-Semitism, but those who are white have white privilege. So we have to be able to slice and dice these identities out to understand where we have advantage and disadvantage in the United States.
Thank you. And Lima, thank you for being here and thank you for watching. Pradnya says, trolls, you say, smart brown people talking on screen? Why would that bother anyone? And that's what we're seeing. Mark says, I talk all the time about the Christian doctrine has influenced much of the racism and sexism in the U.S. Thank you so much, Mark, for being here and for sharing those comments. Ellen says, my suggestion, please have her back. Important subject, and she's terrific. Uh-oh, you're getting invited back. That's great. So many questions and so many comments that are coming in. And I know it's already 10 o'clock and you have a full Saturday. So we want to give you a moment to give us kind of some final thoughts, again, to talk about RBG. And we'll let you just, take your time and then also talk about your book. Give us a plug about why everyone should go out and get your book and understand it at this very critical moment. And I hope you will agree to, in fact, come back. And among the things we want to do is to make sure on election night we have a great show so people can watch CNN and the other channels, but have a conversation with us as well. So over to you, Professor Joshi.
Well, thank you. And Sree, you are a force, I will say, to do this for the last 193 days. So thank you, because clearly you're providing a platform and folks are coming together from around the world, which is just so lovely. I think the most important thing we can do is get out the vote in terms of honor RBG. And we need to get within the South Asian American community. We got to make sure all our uncles and aunties and the young folks in our lives are out there and go vote. That we don't let apathy prevail. Number one, like, well, does my one vote matter? Yes, it matters. I know elections here in New Jersey that have been decided on 37 votes. So it absolutely matters. I'm very involved in democratic state politics here in New Jersey. I helped to co-found the South Asian American Caucus of the State Democratic Party, and have been doing this work for a long time. And it's amazing to me how sometimes people just feel like their vote doesn't matter. I will also say that we have to look at, again, continuing in terms of honoring Justice Ginsburg, making sure that we're involved in our communities and looking at issues of civil rights. I really appreciated the last question from one of the viewers about, what can be done. And like I said, think about civil rights, not just for yourself, but for people who don't look like you, think like you, love like you. And that's really critical, because that's how we're going to build a more just society. I think that one of the things I'd like for people to know about the book is that it's really written from a standpoint of working towards justice. My goal in the work I do is to help build a more perfect union. I think that, and we have to see the injustices in order to get to that. So, bringing in real U.S. history, well, that's on the attack right now by the current administration. Looking at, understanding critical race theory, which is a field out of legal studies, where you don't look at just what's written in the law, but what's the impact of the law, is really important to see. But I think all of us have one charge between now and November 3rd, and that is to make sure nobody stays home and everyone gets out and votes. And I usually say, in my classes, I just want students to vote. And for all these years, that's all I say is just go vote. That's important. But I will say that you need to go out and vote, and you need to go vote for Joe Biden, because we've got to get this country back on track. My parents left India in 1971. My dad came first, and then my mom and I followed, which is the story of so many South Asian American families. And he came here with a dream, and he came here because of the ideals of this country. And those ideals are eroding. And I want to take my country back. So that's what I'll be focused on for the next, 47 days, am I right? 47, 57, 47, 57. I can't do the math right.
It's less than 50 for sure.
And 47 then. And so, again, thank you for having me. And I look forward to celebrating with you on election night. And I look forward to your 365th show.
Oh, no, don't say that. My producers are fainting in the back if you say that. We just want to say Charles Cunningham Carrolls, who's a sponsor of this show and watching, says, great to see another guest from New Jersey. A point that you made about voting. Just want to show you this article about New Jersey that shows that, New Jersey has an important and growing voting bloc, and one that will have an impact in this election in New Jersey. The margin that helped Trump win in so many of those critical states, those 3 states, was less than the percentage of even South Asians in multiple of those states. So it tells you that every vote counts, every vote matters, and you must all vote and get everybody in your family to vote. Here's a comment from Pradnya that summarizes today. She says, and one more book to buy, because you have written a compelling book that everyone should read. Thank you, Professor Joshi. We wish you the very best. What's on tap for Saturday?
Working on a few op-eds because of the attack on critical race theory and on, white privilege and understanding real U.S. history, and spending time with my family, for sure.
All right. Well, thank them for lending you to us for an hour plus. We're very grateful.
Thank you. Thanks again for having me. I really appreciate it. And a quick thank you to Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar, because she recommended me for your show. And so Sree does really take your comments and requests into consideration.
Yes, I certainly do. Thank you very much, Professor. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye. And that was Professor Khyati Joshi. Please follow her at Prof. K. Joshi on Twitter. She is fantastic, as you saw, and so many of you wrote in to say that. Thank you for being here. Thank you for participating with us. Want to just spend a few more minutes just thinking about RBG and talking about what's happening in the world. And here is this historic New York Times front page. Justice Ginsburg is dead at 87. And what are the other stories on the front page? Election jolted as McConnell vows a vote on a Trump pick. And a progressive who turned dissent into victory. And what are the other stories? U.S. set to ban 2 popular apps, escalating a dispute with China and with young people who love TikTok, the fastest app in history to 1 billion downloads. And how a cash card idea derailed White House drug price deal. The idea was for Trump to send every senior in America $100 in time for the elections. And emails describe long campaign to muzzle doctors at the CDC. Everything here is so upsetting. Everything here is so horrifying, but we have to carry on. And that's why we do the show. And that's why we talk. And the Wall Street Journal front page lead story is bans on TikTok, WeChat to begin Sunday. And Justice Ginsburg, High Court liberal champion, dies at 87. Saudi royal family divides over future ties with Israel. And old foe ISIS brims with cash and ambition. And one of the re-election platforms of this president is that he has wiped out ISIS. Someone should send him this article so that he can see this. And money may not grow on trees, but is growing on rare plants. Market for unusual greenery goes wild, attracting flippers and thieves. It's too crazy. So I wonder what those are. I've not read those. Some of you know that every Sunday morning we read the New York Times out loud like crazy people. For 5 years we've been doing that, and look forward to seeing you on my social channels doing that. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Thank you to our great supporters and sponsors and viewers, and for everyone who's written in to say this show has been a lifeline or has been uplifting to you. It has been uplifting to me, and that's why we do it. Let's thank our sponsors, and then we will say their names of the folks who've been killed in police brutality. That's one of the things that Kimberly Crenshaw, the great Columbia Law School professor, asked us to do. And so we've been doing that now for so many weeks and weeks. We thank Nunbelievable Divinely Delicious Cookies on a Mission, 20% off with the code SREE. We want to thank Charles Cunnan Carroll and The Inventor in You, a step-by-step guide to your first invention. He's a developer of more than 80 patents at Inventor Charles and guidetoinvention.com. And we also want to tell you that sponsorship and commercial support provided by please check out hotstar.com/US and Muckrack Academy, Fundamentals of Social Media, a free on-demand course that you can get a certificate in. You can take it right now. More than 4,000 people have taken the course. And here you can see some of the certificates and nice comments that people have put in. mrac.co/social, mrac.co/social. Please sign up if you can and tell your friends and family about it. So what's on tap for the rest of my weekend? We have tomorrow morning, we have the Sunday New York Times read-along with Suzanne McCormick, U.S. President of United Way Worldwide, and Neil Parekh, my colleague and her former colleague, will be running the show. And then we have our wonderful She's on Call show with Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar and Dr. Marina Kurian. Their guests are Dr. Sue Kwan, a urogenital surgeon, and Dr. Germa Turfra, who is a vascular surgeon, and they will be on Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern on She's on Call on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And on Sunday night, we have Positivity with Alexander Rosides, who's founder and president of Social Impact Exchange. And today, from noon to 2 Eastern, we have this radio show that's a spin-off of this show on WBAI 99.5 listener-supported radio, WBAI.org, anywhere in the world. We'll be talking about New York being an epicenter and how it's recovering. We'll be talking about digital scholarship. And then Professor Anil Kalhan will be with us to talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So please tune in if you can. And big thanks to everyone who's here. Thank you for your support. And want to remind you, our guest was Professor Khyati Joshi. Please buy her book, White Christian Privilege, The Illusion of Religious Equality in America. And you can see the recording right after I hit end here. You'll be able to see the recording, but I do want to say their names as we do every single day here. So we use this Titus Kaffir painting on the left that was a cover of Time magazine, and you see the names on the border. I'll be saying those names in just a moment. You see the blue glove of the pandemic. You see a photograph, a haunting photograph to me, of Larcinia Floyd with her son George Floyd in an undated photo. And she would die 2 years, almost to the day that he would be killed, murdered on live video in Minneapolis. They're now buried next to each other in Houston. And here are their names that we say: Trayvon Martin, Yvette Smith, Eric Garner, Michael Brown, Laquan McDonald, Tanisha Anderson, Akai Gurley, Tamir Rice, Jerame Reed, Natasha McKenna, Eric Harris, Walter Scott, Freddie Gray, William Chapman, Sandra Bland, Darius Stewart, Samuel Dubose, Janet Wilson, Kaylin Rockmore, Alton Sterling, Philando Castillo, Joseph Mann, Terrence Crutcher, Chad Robertson, Jordan Edwards, Aaron Bailey, Stefan Clark, Danny Ray Thomas, Antoine Rose, Botham Jean, Tatiana Jefferson, Michael Dean, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd. And those are not all the names. Those are just some of those names. Thank you for joining me as I read those names. Some of them are household names, sadly, and some of them are names you've never heard of, sadly. And that tells you how much work there is to be done and how many names have been added to that list since the death of George Floyd. That's our show, folks. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. Always look forward to your feedback and comments. Please connect with me on Twitter @Sree. Please email me, sree@sree.net. And if you have ideas on how we can work together, I'd love to hear them. Let's see. Lots more comments still coming in. Terrific is the comment here. Amazing job once again. And that was because of Professor Joshi. And just to tell you that we'd love for you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You see it right here, youtube.com/Sreenet. And if you want another way to hear about our shows when we're live, this is our WhatsApp code, just a QR code. You can just hold up your phone and you can get a gentle alert when I am live. It is not another WhatsApp group. It is just a way for you to get a gentle alert on WhatsApp. Otherwise, just get in touch, just email me. Thank you very much, everybody. We appreciate you and your time. And please tell your friends and please share this. We hit replay right now. We will be live again, not live again, but recording will start right now. Professor Joshi will be right on as soon as I hit end on this. Bye-bye. Thank you.